but I actually did not swim any best times my 2 years at Princeton until the very last race I swam. And I was like, it's a sign.
Nice. Welcome to the Sports to Business podcast. Today we have Emily Lammers. Emily, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Amber. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So Emily, you are currently the VP and product manager at Franklin Templeton. You're also an MBA admissions consultant, and you are a #1 best-selling author. That's a lot of great work, lots of great accomplishments. We'd love to understand how you manage all these things, especially in times like today when I know you're also a mom as well. So let's start there. What's keeping you so busy and how do you handle all this stuff?
Yeah, well, I would start out by saying I have always had many interests, for better or for worse. And we can talk about my sports career and kind of how that started a long time ago. But I just have a hard time kind of just doing one thing and being fulfilled with that. I like having a basket of things that I really enjoy and are passionate about. That gives me an energy that focusing on just, my day job or being a parent or doing consulting doesn't. So I have always kind of cultivated a variety of activities that use different parts of my brain, my personality, my strengths, and just use that to kind of keep things interesting, keep me energized, and being an author was something I pursued on my own. The admissions consulting just kind of came out of, advice I was giving my coworkers and friends informally several years ago. So not even something I intended to really pursue, but has ended up being one of my, I guess, a side hustle that I absolutely love. So
yeah. That's awesome. And I think, and I'm kind of similar to you, Emily, where I just can't be satisfied with one thing. And it's like, I need to do some more, something different, right? To keep the brain going. And I think it's something to do with our sports background. I think it's the way we've always been conditioned to always be doing something with our time. If there's a free slot on the calendar, that's like heaven, right? Especially. So on that note, going back to your university days, what was that experience like? And for everybody watching and listening, Emily was part of the swimming team at Princeton, and you guys did break a bunch of records. So walk us through that.
Yeah, so a couple of thoughts on that. I was actually a walk-on on the Princeton swim team. I was very focused on academics first and foremost in my college experience. So, looked at a lot of the Ivies and a lot of the smaller liberal arts schools on the East Coast, mostly Division III schools. But I was focused on academics, and then swimming was a nice to have. I was recruited by some programs I really liked, Dartmouth, Georgetown, were some of my top schools that were interested in me. But I really wanted to go to Princeton, and they were the best swimming school of all the schools I was looking at. So I kind of had to do some self-recruiting. I got in touch with the coach. I met some people on the team, and they said, if you can get in on your own, great. We'd love to have you as part of the team. And that actually happens a lot at the Ivies, just for folks who aren't as familiar. So I got into Princeton, was able to join the swim team, which was really great. One thing I did notice being a walk-on was, back to this theme of doing a lot of things, I had played tennis as well growing up and in high school. In addition to swimming, I was very involved with music. I played the trombone, I played piano, all these things. And that was a little bit different than quite frankly, a lot of my teammates who were better swimmers than I were. They had been pretty much solely focused on swimming. And they found it interesting that I was doing all this other stuff. So that was, just something that was kind of different. I would say, having done many different activities for so many years, I was very good at time management. I mean, I think any college athlete needs to be good at time management, but even just adding more things to the slate of activities, just had to be kind of hyper organized, and also, deciding how to prioritize and where to spend time. When you're a college athlete, you don't have a lot of free time in between practices and school. Obviously, everyone at Princeton's pretty focused on academics as well. So just figuring out, how do I want to allot the very limited time I have? And I am very much using that framework and those skills today as I'm trying to juggle all my different jobs.
That's amazing. So, I mean, how did you develop the skill set back at Princeton? Juggling all these things. What were some of the skill sets maybe you can share with a few folks today? It was kind of like thinking through priorities at the time. Obviously there was a season, there was a preseason, there was an after season, but just thinking, how much time do I want to put into different things at this, this month or this winter. I also sought out other activities. I wrote for the Daily Princetonian as a sports writer, ironically, or maybe not so. And I led freshman backpacking trips through this very large outdoor action organization that Princeton has. So I kind of found other things that would fulfill me that I could slot in around swimming. And that also didn't directly compete. Like the outdoor action stuff was in the spring, and we led the trips in the fall, or the training was in the spring, led the trips in the fall. That didn't compete with swimming in the winter. So it was just kind of strategically piecing these different things together. And then another thing that has been key to my success in college, and most definitely now, is really prioritizing taking care of myself. I'm very selfish about it. And I very much subscribe to LeBron James' obsession with sleep. I tell maybe I shouldn't tell other parents this, but I sleep 8 to 9 hours a night, just because I am focused on that. I'm probably lucky with my kids being sleepers too. But I just think to perform at a high level in sports, business, your family life, your relationships, you really need to be at your best. So for me, that's getting the sleep I need. That's being able to pursue my personal interests. That is working out regularly. Now that I'm not in an organized sport. So I am just super focused on making sure I'm in the best place to perform well. And that's kind of what my book's about too, in a weird way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's I'm glad we're having this conversation, Emily, because there's this, you know this way better than I do because you wrote a book on it. There's this notion of, parents don't get to sleep, and if you can sleep more than 6 hours means you're not busy enough or you're not doing enough for yourself, right? But here you are, former Princeton graduate who has got a pretty amazing corporate journey. You're an author, you're a great mom, and you're a consultant, yet you are sleeping 8 to 9 hours. It is possible. So what's the secret, right?
Being really efficient. And this is something I've learned from sports as well, especially endurance sports. I was a swimmer, and then I got into long distance running after college. And it's almost not it's so wearing on your body, and you can get overuse injuries so much that you want to make sure you're not doing too much. And I do that at work too. I'm what quality over quantity, totally. What are the few things I can do that will have the most impact? I know people throw around the 80-20 rule, but what are the strategic projects, or what's going to have the biggest impact on my team or get me recognized by senior leadership. What am I going to do running? I used to train for marathons. I started training 3 days a week running, doing really high impact workouts instead of all the garbage miles.
Yep.
And just focusing on like the highest impact things I could do in any setting. That has helped me kind of keep all of my balls in the air moving forward, but also getting the time to recharge that I really need.
It's so fascinating, right? Because we think that we've been conditioned that if you're not doing something, it means you're not working hard enough.
Mm-hmm.
But all the great people that I've seen that are successful, such as yourself, even in my experience, it's prioritizing the things that actually matter and doing them well,
Mm-hmm.
and then shutting it off or
Yep.
focusing on something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost also helps you not worry too much about that one thing, which actually helps you perform better, because now you're not worried about the results, which means anytime you're thinking about it, you're like, might as well work on it, which actually backfires, because after a while, the returns are diminishing.
Totally. And I think it's so easy to do that in sports, especially.
Mhm,
You can
mhm.
become so obsessed with your goals and your training, and then so much of sports is such a head game too, that you can just psych yourself out. And I that's why I found it helpful to have other things going on to channel this energy too. So yeah.
It's almost like you want to do more things than just one, so that you can actually get better results on the thing that matters, right? It's counterintuitive, but it works.
And take breaks.
Yes.
I'm always kind of trying to think like, how much do I want to advertise? I do all these things outside of my day job, or I work out in the middle of the day a lot of times just to like recharge and give my brain a break from what I'm doing. And I've actually found this to be kind of one of the silver linings of the whole pandemic is, there's so much more flexibility now with work from home. I feel like this kind of lifestyle has become more accepted, and you don't have to hide it as much. You can be like, yeah, I'm working out at lunch. Like, I'll see you at the 1:00 meeting. That's fine. Oh, I'm picking my kids from school. I just think there's been a lot of downsides in terms of work, and especially for working parents. And I feel that too. But, the flexibility to share what's really going on in your life and say you need a break and schedule in, breaks in the day, workouts, etc., family time, I think has been tremendous. And I hope that's going to continue, as now employees can demand that sort of flexibility in a lot of cases.
And not feel guilty about it.
Right.
Right. And that's the key part, because you're like, I'm going to work out. But if you have a culture, and there unfortunately are companies out there where unless you have the face time, people think you're not working hard enough. Right. So I think that is something that leadership teams have to make sure that it is not just a talk, they actually are also implementing some of those rules that, hey, you don't have to be here every single day. What we want is results. And they should also know, to your point, that if somebody is well rested, they're probably going to benefit your company at the end of the day anyways, because now they have better productivity and they're thinking with a clear mind. So I think it all is somehow, you have to bring it all together, and people have to recognize that, hey, if you are doing well personally, you're also going to do well professionally for yourself, but also for the company you're working at.
Yep. And I have noticed, maybe this is like my MBA background, but the notion of empathetic leadership was kind of like a newer concept, 10 years ago when I was starting business school. And I do feel like it is becoming more recognized. Like, these things matter. In my world, investments, everyone's all about ESG. Like, that was just in its infancy a decade ago, and now people are really concerned about how companies are treating their people. How managers are responding to their reports, personal lives and challenges. And I don't want to say it's getting all touchy-feely, but some of this was needed. So I've been really encouraged just to see the transformation that's happened in my corporate career.
That's amazing. So what are, after your journey from Princeton, how was the transition like? And how did you, I think, especially for student athletes listening to this program, what was some of the things that allowed you to navigate your career and really every step of the way make progress? So what
Hmm.
was that like?
Yeah, so I would say knowing how to deal with challenges and setbacks,
Yep.
kind of playing the long term game. I mean, in sports, you're getting constant feedback, especially in my sports where you have a time every time you get in the
Hmm.
water or on the road. And it's not always going to be the time you want, or, you're not going to play the game you want, or what. There's a lot of patience required, which is really hard for competitive people. And you just kind of have to keep going. So this was something that served me well because in my career, because honestly, I don't really feel like I hit my stride in my career until probably like 5 or 6 years out.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I wasn't happy. I started my financial career right, a year before the global financial crisis, which was really tough. It just took a lot of soul searching and being super competitive, like I am, and having all these Princeton classmates. It's so easy to focus on, well, this, all my friends are on this linear track, and they're doing so well in their jobs, and we're all on social media and LinkedIn, and
Yeah.
it can
And
be really
comparing yourself constantly.
it can be really disheartening. Yeah. And so, I guess I'm proud of myself for kind of sticking it out. I tried a lot of different things, honestly. And that was painful in that I wasn't making all this tangible progress, but I was really figuring out what I wanted to do, what I was good
Yeah.
at, what I enjoyed. And I actually took a break from investment management where I started. Did some different things, worked on a political campaign, did some consulting to startups, worked at a biotech company for a year, used my
Wow.
biology degree for a hot minute there. And then I went back to investment management, kind of knowing what was on, what the opportunity set was. And I also went from, I had started in research and due diligence. I moved over to marketing and product management, which is a much better fit for my personality and my skills. So that was kind of a painful process. And honestly, I think it's something where most of us, I guess most of the people I know, and I certainly don't know, are still wondering some days, what do I want to do when I grow up?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So I
It's
think we just,
I was just saying it's impossible to know what you want to do.
mm-hmm,
I still don't know what I want to do, even though, looking at your profile, your resume or my resume, somebody might say, well, this is what you are. But if somebody do ask me honestly today, what do you want to do 5 years from now? I can't tell you. I
mm-hmm,
don't know what's going to happen in 5 years,
mm-hmm.
whether I'm still going to like what I'm doing today. So I think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves when we leave
Definitely.
school.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of people go through this phase, especially in your 20s. Like 30s,
Yeah.
I found to be a little more subtle, but I think the early years in your career can be really challenging, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's all about, well, I'm doing this in my career, and that's great, and I'm learning so much, and okay, maybe. Some people find what they like right out of the gate, or work at a great company where they can move around a lot and that
Yeah.
gives them opportunities. But I think it's challenging for a lot of people. And I think if you've grown up playing sports, at least you're kind of comfortable with, all right, this is a process. I just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other, seeing what I can learn, seeing how I can improve myself, and just having the faith that there will be that breakthrough or that result. You
Yeah.
will find, where you're supposed to be. So
It's the journey that we have to be that we have to like, right? As cliche as it is.
yes.
Um, I mean, you don't win a championship overnight. It takes years of practice. Now, to somebody in the stands, it might look like, well, this year out of nowhere, this team came around and they won the championship. But what they don't see is the years of practice, right? And the late game reviews at night, the late practices, the late workouts, all that stuff is what allows you to win. So I think that even in my experience in our careers, it's about continuing to take the right actions and learn and evolve, and then just say yes to things and test it out. So I think it's being open to opportunities as one of those things.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah. The one thing that I did notice, Emily, I'm curious to ask, I think it was going to fit really well with what a lot of people are experiencing today, because I myself left the corporate world a few years ago and started my own business. You at Princeton, you actually left the swimming team because you didn't enjoy it as much. So what was behind that decision, and what made you actually make that decision? Because I know a lot of people right now, and I was there. You wanna leave. It's the right decision to leave, but you just continue chugging along and hating yourself. So how did you make that decision, and what was behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I was just burnt out. If I'm being honest with myself, I was probably burnt out from after high school. But it felt like the right thing to do. Who doesn't want to be a Division I college athlete? Yeah. And I don't regret swimming for 2 years. There is something amazing about being part of. I'm gonna quote my college coach, but she always used to say, something bigger than ourselves, which is easy but true. I stepped on campus and had an immediate group of friends, and being a athlete just helps you kind of navigate new environments and have support and something to put your effort into. So there are a lot of benefits. I'm glad I did it. The decision to quit, when I realized that was probably in my best interest, still was not easy. I think, again, something with sports, it's like an identity. I'm like, well, I'm a swimmer. So what will people how will people know me if I'm not on this team anymore? Or that's not what I'm doing. So I don't know, I wrestled with it kind of all of the off season. And at some point there was some drama going on with the team too. that was going on in the background. And that was like, I don't need to spend my mental energy on this. Yeah. So that was kind of the last straw for me. But I do think, again, what made it easier to make that transition was I had other activities that I was doing, that I was invested in. I had made a lot of friends outside the swim team, which was kind of unusual. I think a lot of sports teams can be a little culty, which is a blessing and a curse.
I knew very few little people outside the football team.
My husband was a college athlete as well, and he actually has a few friends that call themselves regulars. I'm like, come on. We're not that special. But yeah, I feel like I also knew some friends or some other people on sports teams that kind of would have liked to quit, but that was their whole world, and I think they just kept going. And who knows what's the right decision or not, but for me, it was kind of a big relief. I mean, I was happy to close that chapter. This is kind of a fun little story, but I actually did not swim any best times my 2 years at Princeton until the very last race I swam, and I was like, it's a sign.
Nice. Go out on a high note.
Yeah. So, I studied abroad the next year, which you really couldn't do if you were playing sports, and just kind of, I feel like I had two very different halves of college, and they both had wonderful things in them. So
it's amazing. I think it's about whatever decision you make. It's like our coach would say, make it at full speed. Because even if you're wrong, you can adjust later. Well, it doesn't mean you're gonna get the right decision, but at least make a decision. Don't hesitate. You can be, okay, I want to be in the team, but then you're not really invested in the team fully.
Right.
So you're actually unhappy. You're not as happy as you would be otherwise. So I think it's a great story, right? It's And even in business, it's like, hey, you're never going to know the right answer. But pick a direction and let's go, and we'll figure out the rest.
Definitely.
And the other thing that you did mention, Emily, is we tend to associate our what we do as our identity. If let's say you're in investment banking, you might be saying, hey, that's what I am. And it makes it, even though you might not like, let's say for some reason, before when you were doing it, or before the MBA, you might not have liked that career. Or for me, let's say I'm an author or speaker, that's the identity. But if you want to change that, you want to do something else, now you're like, you know what am I going to be known as if I leave? And I think that's such a not the right way of associating ourselves, our self-worth with what we do, which unfortunately is what we tend to do in today's society.
Absolutely. And I'm aware of that now that I'm a mother, and I meet lots of other moms, and I want to, because I'm career driven, I want to be like, well, what do you do? But then, like, I think being a stay-at-home mom is like really challenging and amazing also. And the last thing I want to do is make it not feel like that. But I also don't really know how to navigate the conversation sometimes. So I'll like chit chat about stuff. And I think as a culture, we're trying to figure out how to de-emphasize these labels, which have historically been so important and are still really important to some of us, because we are invested in what we're doing all day, every day. But if I figure out how to broach this a little more gracefully,
let me know. Tell us about your book. I know it's a #1 Amazon bestseller. So what was the story behind that and the process there?
So my book is called No Drama, First Time Mama,
Nice.
A practical guide to living your best life as a new mother. And I wrote it, it's been published it a little over a year now. And it's kind of I felt like I had a not unique take on being a mom, but just I had a message that is not mainstream, which really does center on what we were talking about earlier, prioritizing your health and well-being. When you become a mom, it's all about the baby. People, how's the baby doing? You're in the hospital, they're taking care of the baby. The baby's gonna be fine in most cases.
Yeah.
I just think there is not nearly enough focus on how mothers are doing. And there's a lot of judgment too about, well, if you're going away with your friends for a weekend, or, if you're not, enriching your child every single hour of the day, or you're not into this competitive attachment parenting, then you're not all in. And I just think that is complete baloney. I think it's a road to burnout. And I just wanted to find some way to kind of elevate this conversation that, hey, moms matter too. You need to be thinking about yourself, and not feeling guilty about it. I think mom guilt is garbage.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that in a fun and engaging way. So it's a short book. It has a lot of funny anecdotes about my experience, but it's also meant to be empowering and uplifting, and just something different than what's out there, which is all about the baby, or like, oh, haha, I'm a mom now and my life sucks. Like, I don't think that's helpful. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I was actually talking to my mom last week. I was up in Canada, and I don't know what the conversation, how it started, but she's like, I don't know how I raised you. I didn't even have a seat for you when you were a kid, but you turned out fine. But you have all these babies today where you got all these things you got to invest in, and every small little thing has to be perfect. And she's like, and I have two sisters, younger sisters. She's like, well, look at you guys. You're fine. I don't even remember raising you guys, right? So I just remembered that whole story right now as you were mentioning that. Hey, I think whether it is being a mom or anything else, I think we do put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be this perfect. And I think half of that is the society we're living in today, the times we're living in today, social media, for example, comparing yourselves. I want to be this perfect mom or this perfect athlete, this perfect employee, right? We see a lot of these things. At the end of the day, nobody's perfect. And I think you have to look at what's the best for you and take care of yourself first, so that you can take care of the people around you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, I got the message that it was basically impossible to be perfect really early, which kind of hurt at the time, but has been really helpful for me. When you go to Princeton, you're not the best at anything anymore, pretty much. Yeah. So that's a tough pill for a lot of people to swallow. But yeah, I moved on and I said, okay, how can I do what's best for me and contribute how I can? And that has been a good reminder for me throughout the years. That
it's funny. My wife went to MIT and she asked me a question a few weeks ago. She's like, when was the time when you realized, Tanvir, that the world doesn't revolve around you? She's like, for me, it was the day I got to MIT. You know, when you go to this level of competitiveness such as yourself at Princeton, you do realize that, hey, no one's perfect. There's great people out there. So just do the best you can.
Yep. And
enjoy the journey.
And also be inspired by the greatness around you.
Around you, exactly.
Princeton or on your sports team or where you work. But I mean, I personally probably take the most inspiration these days from my clients who are, 10-ish years younger than me. They're usually targeting the top 15 MBA programs in the US. And man, like they are organized, they're passionate, they are interesting. And I think, being exposed to and engaging with just really awesome people, even if sometimes that they make me feel like inferior, like, oh, I wasn't doing that when I was 25. Like, that's really wonderful. And if you can just bottle up some of that energy and those insights, like I just think there's something to be said for recognizing I'm not perfect, I'm not the best, but let me take some of this energy from those around me who are the best or are succeeding in different realms than I am.
Yeah, and be happy for people. And I think in turn, you grow yourself, right? Seeing others succeed is actually going to help you get better because you learn and you're open to a new perspective versus thinking that you're the best.
Definitely.
Emily, one last question. What is your number one advice to leaders today in this new post-pandemic world on being their best selves?
Besides sleep.
Yes. That is the most important thing, but
in my world, definitely.
Yeah.
Gosh, post-pandemic, that can mean a lot of things. But something that's really stood out to me in this post-pandemic, we're moving into this new reality. People are working remotely still, or there's hybrid situations going on. My company acquired a large competitor. Franklin Templeton acquired Lake Mason during the pandemic. So I'm working with all these people that I've never met in person before.
Wow.
Has just underscored how much relationships matter. Investing in getting to know people. This was something I was very social in college, but then when I got into my career, I was a little timid and a little pensive, and I wasn't comfortable reaching out to people or, getting to know them if I wasn't directly in their orbit. And that I have worked on that. I've gotten more comfortable with taking calculated risks, which is, again, something we learn from sports, whether it's making a surge in a race and, you might die at the end, you just don't know, or, going for a kill on the field. Yeah. I don't know.
Go for it. Yeah.
That was probably the wrong terminology for sports, team sports, but I just think I got comfortable with taking those calculated risks, getting to know people, contacting people that seemed way out of my league, finding some common ground with them. That has helped me in my career at these very large organizations, and also in the pandemic environment, and in a merger situation. I feel like I am in a much better place than a lot of people right now because I have these really strong relationships across the organization. I'm reaching out to new people. That it's helpful for everyone. Yeah. It's helpful for me. I like getting to know people and then just knowing how to get things done, and vice versa, help people out. So a little trite, but relationships matter. Invest in them. Put yourself out there. Just get to know folks and see how you can mutually work together for the greater good. So
we're social animals, and you'll be surprised, and you've seen this firsthand, Emily. I've seen this as well, that most people actually do want to connect with you as well. So don't be afraid of reaching out, because people love talking to other people.
And they love talking about themselves too.
Exactly.
Just ask some questions.
Yeah, just ask the right questions. So let's meet as many people as you can. Relationships, absolutely. Emily, how can everybody watching and listening get to connect with you and learn more about your book and the consulting that you do?
Yes, so my book is on Amazon. You can also find me as an admissions consultant on this new platform started by two very bright Stanford Business School graduates called Leland. They're trying to make admissions more accessible to more people, admissions consulting. And then my personal website is emilyexplainsitall.com, which I should update more, but I don't.
That's a great name.
Because prioritizing.
Yes, focus on the things that the most important things.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much, Emily. Great to have you on the podcast. Really enjoyed all the insights.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me.
All the best 2022 and beyond.
Same to you. No more pandemic, hopefully.
No more pandemic.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.